Today's lesson is on using electrical meters to measure what is going on within a circuit and to actually get some numbers. So first off, first thing that we can measure in a circuit is voltage, okay? Voltage, another name for that is electrical potential, and it is measured using a voltmeter. Okay, this voltmeter has to be connected in parallel, okay? Think of this as meaning that the voltmeter is outside of the circuit. You do not have to disconnect the circuit in order to add a voltmeter. So that's really important because it's going to be different than another type of meter that we're going to use later on in the unit. So it's connected in parallel, that's outside of the circuit, and you don't have to disconnect the circuit to add a voltmeter. So if we draw a schematic diagram for the following circuit, you have a 6-volt battery connected to a light bulb and a switch. Then you add in a voltmeter to measure the electric potential difference or the voltage drop across the light bulb. Here's how you would do that. So first off, let's start by drawing the circuit without the voltmeter. So here is your 6-volt battery, okay? And it's connected to a light bulb and a switch. So let's put the light bulb, we'll put the switch over here. I'll put the light bulb over here. There we go. Okay, and then what we'll do is we'll attach the switch there to know that the switch is on. So then you add the voltmeter and you want to measure the electric potential or how much energy goes through the light bulb, okay? So when you do that, we're not going to disconnect any of the circuit. So that means that we're basically going to add the voltmeter and we're just going to attach it to either side of the light bulb. So when you guys are actually going to be doing this in the lab, that's how you're going to do it. You're going to build your circuit, and you're just going to attach the voltmeter to either side of the light bulb. Okay, this is what a voltmeter looks like. It's a little bit blurry, but you can see that it's got all these little ticks or markers, okay? And then you can see it's sort of got 3 scales. It's got a scale that goes from 0 all the way up to 300. And, oh no, sorry, yep, that's 300, okay. You've got another scale above the tickers that goes from 0 all the way up to 3. And then the last one goes from 0 all the way up to 15. So the question usually is, which scale do you use? Well, that depends what part of the voltmeter you hook up to the circuit. So you always start, so if you look at your voltmeter, when you look at them in class, you'll see you've got a negative terminal on the voltmeter, okay, always in the same spot. That has to go to towards the negative terminal of the battery. Okay, so there's your negative terminal. And then you have 3 options where to connect the other wire to put on the other side of your light bulb, okay? So you've got one that's your 3-volt scale, your 15-volt scale, and your 300-volt scale, okay? So if you end up using a battery, say that goes in between 0 and 3 volts, you're going to hook it up to the first one. If you're using a battery that's somewhere in between 0 and 15 volts, you'd hook it up to the second one. And if you've got a battery that's bigger than that, you're going to use the third one, okay? When you use each one of these scales, that marking unit, those little ticks that I showed you, each have a different value, okay? So if you go back for a sec, all those little ticks that I drew in basically represent a different amount depending on which scale you're using. So if you're using the first scale from 1 to 3, the value of each tick is 0.1 volts. If you're going from 0 to 15, the value of each tick, if you go back to here, becomes 0.5 volts. And if you go from 0 to 300, the value of each tick would be 10. Okay, so you can write that down and you can refer back to this when we're actually building these circuits in the lab. Oops, oh, there we go, 0.5 and 10. All right, so draw a picture to show how you would hook up a voltmeter to measure the voltage in a circuit with a 6-volt battery. So in this case, again, you'd have a 6-volt battery, And let's just draw a circuit. Now, it doesn't say what else is in the circuit, but it doesn't really matter. So you could have something here, here, and here. But if you're looking to measure the voltage in the entire circuit, you measure the voltage across the battery. So I don't disconnect my circuit to measure the voltage. In this case, I'm just going to put it across the battery. All right, measuring current now. Electric current is measured using an ammeter, and the ammeter is connected in series. That means that the ammeter is in the circuit. So when you're adding an ammeter in, you will have to disconnect the circuit to add in an ammeter. If you don't do that, you're not going to get the correct reading, okay? So draw a schematic diagram for this. You have a 6-volt battery connected to a light bulb and a switch. You added the voltmeter to measure the potential difference across the battery, and an ammeter is connected to measure the current between the light bulb and the switch. So how would we draw that? Well, start by drawing everything without your meters. So draw in your battery first, and it's connected to a light bulb. Oops, where did my initial drawing go? Oops, sorry, hold on. Let's go back. Okay, we'll start this again. So you start by drawing your battery, your 6-volt battery, and it's connected to a light bulb. And I'll put the switch over here. You want to add a voltmeter to measure the electrical potential difference drop across the battery. So that means I'm going to add in my voltmeter over here across the battery. So see how it goes on either side of the battery? That means across the battery. Notice I didn't have to connect or disconnect my circuit in order to add that in. But now I also want to add in an ammeter connected to measure the current between the light bulb and the switch. So that means I would have to add my ammeter in here, okay? That means I'd have to disconnect these wires, put in my ammeter, and then reconnect the wires because the ammeter is now inside the circuit. The voltmeter is outside the circuit, ammeter is inside the circuit. So ammeter looks very similar to the voltmeter. Okay, again, it's got 3 scales, one that goes from 0 to 5 on the bottom, one that goes from 0 to 50 milliamps, and one that goes from 0 to 500 milliamps. So depending on your circuit, you might have to connect the ammeter in various ways. So, again, where to connect the wires. So, sorry, a milliamp means milliampere. So that means 1,000 amps. Or sorry, 1,000 milliamps gives you 1 amp. Okay, so if you're measuring something between 0 and 500 milliamps, you're going to connect the wires to the negative terminal and the 500 milliamp terminal. And the value of each tick would be 10 milliamps. The negative terminal and a 50 milliamp terminal, the value of each unit marking would be 1 milliamp. And between 0 and 5 amps, you do it between the negative terminal and the 5 amp terminal. And in this case, the value of each unit marking is 0.1 amps, okay? Notice, just so you guys know, this is actually the highest rating or the highest measurement of current that you can get, okay? Because you don't have milliamps. So this is like saying 0 to 5,000 milliamps, okay, which is greater than the 500 or the 50. So just so you know, an amp is not smaller than a milliamp, it's actually bigger. Just like a meter is bigger than a millimeter. Okay, so hopefully you have all that down. We're going to do one more picture. So draw a picture to show how you would hook up an ammeter to measure the current in a circuit, but you have no prediction of the current. So what you would do is you would basically start, if you go back, you would start with one of the 3. Okay, I usually would start with the smallest and work your way up to the largest. So you'd start by hooking it up to the 50 milliamp terminal. And if your needle goes skyrocketing, you change it, put it on the 500, and you change it again and put it on the 5,000. So what we're actually going to do is, if you want to try and draw this yourself, you can. But what we'll do is we'll do that together in class as part of your Check Your Understanding.